June 1944. To the west, the world is watching Normandy. To the east, 4 Soviet armies are about to strike a sector the Germans call stable. In just weeks, Operation Bagration will erase Army Group Center. With over 350,000 German casualties, entire divisions destroyed, and Belarus lost. How does an army group vanish, and why did the Allies overlook the real turning point on the Eastern Front? The disaster was already inevitable. On the maps at German headquarters, Army Group Center looked formidable. The order of battle listed 4 armies, nearly 800,000 men, and dozens of divisions strung across Belarus. But the reality behind those numbers told a different story. Most divisions were operating at just 40 to 60% of their authorized strength. Infantry regiments that should have fielded thousands of men now marched with a few hundred. Tanks and assault guns were scarce. Some divisions counted fewer than a dozen armored vehicles. Artillery batteries were short on guns and shells. Even basic transport was in crisis. Horse-drawn wagons outnumbered trucks, and fuel was rationed to the point of immobility. The reason for this hollow front ran deeper than attrition. German high command, convinced that the main Soviet attack would strike Ukraine, had quietly shifted mobile reserves south and west. The best panzer divisions waited near the Carpathians or in France, leaving Army Group Center to hold a front 600 kilometers long with static, depleted units. Requests for reinforcements went unanswered. Commanders tried to compensate by building strong points and relying on rivers, forests, and field fortifications. But there was no depth, no mobile reserve to seal a breach or mount an effective counterattack if the line broke. Inside headquarters, staff officers tracked their units on neat charts, but even they began to worry. Reports filtered in. Battalions were down to company size, heavy weapons were missing, and supply columns were being ambushed by partisans. The illusion of strength held only as long as the front remained quiet. Beneath the surface, Army Group Center was stretched thin, and one hard blow could bring collapse. Stavka's plan for the summer offensive called for 4 massive Soviet fronts to strike Army Group Center at once. The 1st Baltic, 3rd Belarusian, 2nd Belarusian, and 1st Belarusian fronts lined up from north to south, each assigned a sector and a breakthrough axis. This was no blunt push. Soviet commanders aimed to punch deep, encircle, and destroy, not just drive the Germans back. The timing was deliberate. It began on June 22, 1944, exactly 3 years after Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. The real weapon was surprise. Soviet planners, drawing on lessons from earlier campaigns, built a web of deception that ran from the highest staff rooms down to the forest floor. Dummy tanks and fake airfields appeared in Ukraine, while real troop movements into Belarus took place only at night under strict radio silence. Orders moved by courier, not by wire. Camouflage teams hid supply dumps and assembly areas in the forests, and aircraft flew daily to check for any sign of exposure. In the south, Stavka staged visible buildups and noisy maneuvers, feeding German expectations of another Ukrainian offensive. Meanwhile, in Belarus, the forests grew thick with hidden columns, men and machines packed into staging zones waiting for the signal. The visible activity in the south was meant as a decoy to mask the real preparation to the north. Even among the Soviet commanders, secrecy was tight. Only a handful knew the full scope of the operation. In planning meetings, General Konstantin Rokossovsky, leading the 1st Belarusian front, pressed for a bold double envelopment at Bobruisk, 2 axes, not 1. Stalin resisted, calling the plan too ambitious. Rokossovsky stood his ground, returning twice to insist on the dual thrust. At last, Stalin relented, telling his staff, "The commander insists, let it be as he says." The trap was set. The German front, already hollow, would soon face converging blows it could neither predict nor withstand. In the forests and marshes behind the front, tens of thousands of Soviet partisans moved into action. On the night of June 19th, they struck rail lines, bridges, and junctions across Belarus. Explosives tore up more than 1,000 points on the network. The main arteries, Minsk to Orsha and Vitebsk to Mogilev, were cut in dozens of places. Repair crews rushed from one wreck to the next, but the damage outpaced their efforts. Trains carrying reinforcements and supplies stalled in the woods, unable to reach the front. Some never arrived at all. German columns forced onto the roads found themselves ambushed at choke points, with burned-out trucks and shattered bridges marking the routes. Inside headquarters, the disruption bred confusion and paralysis. Reports of sabotage poured in, but there was no reserve to send and no time to improvise new routes. Requests for permission to pull back from exposed salients, Orsha, Mogilev, and Bobruisk, were met with silence or outright refusal. Hitler's orders were clear. Every city designated as a fortified place must be held at all costs. Withdrawal was forbidden even as Soviet forces massed for attack. Commanders who questioned these orders saw their careers, and sometimes their freedom, end on the spot. On June 22nd, the same day the Soviet offensive began, Hitler personally rejected a request to pull back from Orsha, insisting that the line be held and counterattacks launched, no matter the odds. As the crisis deepened, Berlin finally replaced Field Marshal Busch with Walter Model on June 28th. Known as the Wehrmacht's fireman, Model arrived to find Army Group Center already in freefall. His first dispatches called for desperate measures, emergency withdrawals, ad hoc battle groups, and a new defensive line somewhere, anywhere west. But by then, the front was already broken. The rail war and stand-fast orders had locked the German armies in place, leaving them exposed to the blow that was about to fall. At 5 in the morning on June 22nd, the silence along the front exploded into a storm of fire. Thousands of Soviet guns and rocket launchers unleashed a 2-hour barrage. Each piece was supplied with enough shells, on average 6 tons per gun, to maintain a relentless curtain of steel. The ground shook under the weight of high explosives. Artillery densities climbed past 200 tubes per kilometer in the breakthrough sectors. Trenches, bunkers, and wire entanglements vanished in the smoke, while German forward positions were hammered into vanished silence. Above the battlefield, Soviet bombers and ground attack aircraft swept in low, targeting command posts, bridges, and road junctions. That night alone, medium bombers flew around 1,000 sorties, adding to the chaos behind German lines. Communications were severed, headquarters were blinded, and reserves were pinned down on shattered roads. For many German units, the first warning of the offensive was the destruction of their own lines. Telephone wires were cut, observation posts were buried, and runners never returned. As the barrage lifted, Soviet infantry surged forward, followed by waves of tanks and self-propelled guns. Assault groups pressed through the gaps torn by artillery. Engineers cleared minefields under fire, and mobile columns began to push deep into the German defensive zone. The choreography was precise. Artillery moved ahead in rolling waves, while aircraft struck at any sign of German movement. On the ground, Soviet commanders coordinated rifle divisions, tank brigades, and sappers in a tightly woven advance. The front, hollow and brittle, began to splinter. In some sectors, the German line simply ceased to exist, swept away by the combined force of firepower and maneuver. Encirclement came swiftly and with finality. At Vitebsk, Soviet pincers closed around Lee Corps by June 24th. 3 to 4 German divisions were trapped against the western Dvina, their escape routes blocked by blown bridges and partisan ambushes in the forests. Orders from above demanded they hold at all costs. A belated signal allowed a single division to attempt breakout, but most were cut down or captured as the pocket collapsed. By June 26th, Vitebsk had fallen. Of more than 30,000 German soldiers encircled, only a few thousand stragglers reached their own lines. The rest, killed, wounded, or taken prisoner, simply vanished from the order of battle. South of Vitebsk, the same pattern repeated at Bobruisk. On June 24th, Rokossovsky's two-pronged assault encircled the bulk of 9th Army east of the Berezina. The river crossings became slaughter pens. Soviet artillery and aircraft hammered the trapped columns, killing about 10,000 and capturing at least 6,000 more. As Soviet tank corps swept into Bobruisk itself, the pocket was crushed. By June 29th, 9th Army had ceased to exist as a fighting force. Survivors fled west in small, disorganized groups, many only to be trapped again. The final blow fell at Minsk. By July 3rd, Soviet spearheads had linked up west of the city, trapping tens of thousands, remnants of 4th Army, battered fragments from earlier battles, and refugees from Bobruisk. In the last Minsk pocket, around 15,000 Germans were encircled. Only about 900 managed to break out. The rest were killed or captured as the Red Army swept on. With these pockets destroyed, Army Group Center no longer existed as a coherent command. The collapse was total, the front erased in a matter of days. Today, war planners still study Bagration's speed and scale, a reminder that overwhelming force and deception can erase certainties overnight. As new conflicts hinge on misjudged stable fronts, Bagration warns that what seems secure can vanish in weeks. History's true turning points often unfold where few are watching.